The house where Silence lived, the house of Mr. Remen, located in a busy yet peaceful neighborhood, was known for its warmth. Neighbors often described it as a house where laughter echoed through the walls, a place where hospitality and togetherness always came first. But that impression was slowly fading, because inside the house, the silence was beginning to grow louder, silence created by the fragile, complicated bond between the two most important women in the house. Mrs. Remen, the mother-in-law, and Ishotha, daughter-in-law, for months. They had tried to hide their disagreements behind smiles, but small arguments gradually turned into resentment, and that resentment soon turned into a quiet, burning war between them. The beginning of the storm. When Aisha first entered the Remen household, she carried dreams, hopes, and expectations. She was polite, gentle, and eager to adjust. For the first few weeks, everything felt perfect. Mrs. Remen appreciated her soft nature, her cooking skills, and her willingness to learn. But slowly, small misunderstandings began to appear. It started with tiny comments. "You should cook like this. You don't know how to set the table. You forgot to iron his clothes properly." Aisha tried to smile through these comments, but deep down it hurt. She felt she was constantly being judged, constantly compared, constantly reminded that she was not enough. On the other side, Mrs. Remen had her own insecurities. She had spent decades managing the house alone. Suddenly, a new woman was taking over the duties she had handled all her life. She felt replaced, unneeded, even threatened by the presence of this younger, modern daughter-in-law. Neither woman understood the other's fears. And that is how storms are born, not from anger, but from the silence between two hearts. The day everything changed one evening, the conflict burst. Aisha cooked biryani for dinner. She had spent 2 hours in the kitchen, wanting to impress the family. But when everyone sat down to eat, Mrs. Remen tasted it and said, "It's too spicy. You should have asked me first." Aisha replied politely, "But Amy, this is how everyone liked it last time." "That doesn't matter," the mother-in-law snapped. "You never listen. You don't respect my way of cooking or running this house." Aisha's face turned pale. She looked at her husband, Armin, hoping he would support her, but he stayed quiet. He hated confrontation. His silence made everything worse. Aisha quietly left the table and went to her room. For the first time since her marriage, she cried until she could no longer breathe properly. From that day onward, the distance between the two women became solid, like a wall that neither tried to break. The growing Cold War days turned into weeks. The house that once echoed with laughter now echoed with silence. Aisha cooked separately. She ate separately. She stayed mostly in her room. Mrs. Remen felt offended by Aisha's withdrawal. She interpreted it as disrespect. "She doesn't want to be part of this family." She complained to her sister over the phone. "She thinks we are old-fashioned." Meanwhile, Aisha cried alone. "I try so hard. Why does nothing make her happy?" Armin was stuck between the two women he loved. Most he didn't know how to help. He didn't know whose side to take, so he took none again, making things worse. A small spark becomes a fire one afternoon. The conflict escalated. Aisha had gone to her mother's house for a few hours. When she returned, she found that her cupboard had been rearranged. Her clothes were moved. Her jewelry box was open. Even her personal diary had been shifted. She immediately went to her mother-in-law, double quotes, "Am, did you go into my room?" Mrs. Remen replied, "Yes, I was cleaning." A daughter-in-law doesn't hide things from her mother-in-law. Aisha felt violated. "Amy, you should have asked." Mrs. Remen became defensive. "So now I need permission to enter a room inside my own house." Arguments began. Words became sharp. Voices rose, and for the first time ever, Aisha said something she regretted. "Amy, you don't like me. You never liked me." Mrs. Remen replied, "You came here and tried to take my place. You think you're smarter than me." It was no longer a misunderstanding. It was pure hurt on both sides. Armand rushed home after receiving a call from a neighbor who heard the shouting. But by the time he arrived, the damage was already done. Leaving home that night, Aisha packed a small bag. Her hands were trembling. Her eyes were swollen. "Armand, I want to go to my mother's house for a few days," she whispered. Armin looked helpless. He wanted to stop her but didn't know how. When Aisha walked out of the door, Mrs. Remen stood silently, her pride refusing to let her ask her to stay. Even though her heart felt heavy. Sometimes ego speaks louder than love. The empty house days passed. Aisha stayed with her parents. She cried every night. Replaying the arguments in her mind, she wondered if the house she tried so hard to adjust in had ever accepted her. Meanwhile, back home, the silence haunted Mrs. Remen. She missed Aisha's presence in the kitchen, missed the sound of her footsteps. She missed someone calling her Amy. But she didn't admit it. Armand was mentally exhausted. The family was falling apart, and he didn't know how to fix it. The truth behind the anger. One evening, Armand sat beside his mother. "Amy, why do you dislike Aisha so much?" His mother's eyes softened. "I don't dislike her," she whispered. "Then why do you treat her like this?" Armand asked. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Because I'm scared," she said. "Scared of what?" "Scared that I will lose you. Scared that you will no longer need me. Scared that I will disappear from your life." Armin was stunned. All this time, she wasn't angry, she was insecure. He gently held her hand. Amy, you will always be my mother. No one can replace you. Not even Aisha. For the first time, Mrs. Remen cried openly. Aisha's side of the story, meanwhile, Aisha poured her heart out to her own mother. I don't hate Amy, she said. I just feel I can never be good enough for her. Her mother replied softly, you have two choices. Either you let your hurt destroy your marriage, or you try to understand her fears. Aisha wiped her tears. Maybe I should give it another chance. The return after a week, Armin convinced Aisha to return home. When she entered the house, she felt nervous and shaky, but something was different. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. The atmosphere wasn't tense, and then she saw her mother-in-law standing at the doorway. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mrs. Remen stepped forward. I made tea. Your favorite. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. That cup of tea was more powerful than 1,000 apologies. Breaking the wall that evening, Armin sat with both women and spoke honestly. Amy, Aisha, is not here to replace you. She just wants your love. Aisha, he continued, Amy has lived alone for years. She's scared of losing me. Try to understand her. Both women listened. Quietly, Aisha reached out and held her mother-in-law's hand. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel replaced, she said softly, and I'm sorry if I ever made you feel unwelcome, replied Mrs. Remen for the first time. The invisible wall between them began to crumble. Understanding each other, days passed, and small gestures began to change everything. Aisha asked her mother-in-law for cooking tips. She involved her in decisions. She praised her recipes. In return, Mrs. Remen gave Aisha freedom. She trusted her with the house. She appreciated her efforts. Slowly, affection grew. They started cooking together. They often had tea in the evening. They shared stories from their lives. The house echoed with laughter. Again, a new chapter months later. When Aisha discovered she was pregnant, the first person she wanted to tell was her mother-in-law. I have good news. Mrs. Remen's eyes sparkled. They hugged not as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but as to women who had finally understood each other. The final lesson: every house has arguments. Every relationship has misunderstandings. But sometimes, the real battle is not between two people, but between expectations and fears. Aisha and Mrs. Remen learned that love grows when ego dies, relationships survive when pride doesn't, and families stay together when hearts communicate. Their story became a reminder that misunderstandings break families, but understanding can rebuild them.